Picture your typical suburban family. I'm Travis Dalton, 45 years old, a guy with thinning hair and a few pounds I wouldn't mind losing. I stay in decent shape, no six-pack yet, but I try. I've never been into facial hair, and I prefer contact lenses to glasses. My wife, Melissa, has a graceful figure, a little softness in her belly and a curved back, both of which I've always found endearing. She's not drop-dead gorgeous or unattractive, just one of those people who doesn't leave a lasting impression based on looks alone. At 45, she still wears glasses and insists on being called Melissa, never Mel or Missy. We have a daughter, Allie, she's 21 now, in college. Smart kid like her mom. She put on some weight since her high school volleyball days, but she's confident, independent, and big on women's rights. Still, she leans on us financially more than she probably should. Lately, money's been tight. I'm the only one bringing in a paycheck, and I didn't want to saddle Allie with student loans, so she agreed, reluctantly, to keep living at home. Melissa and Allie have a taste for the finer things, though. While I drive an old F-150 that's more rust than paint, they each have luxury sedans. Our house? It doesn't have much equity left. Too many housing loans to fund their high-end tastes. Our lives follow a pretty standard rhythm. Weekend get-togethers with neighbors, the occasional block party. Nothing too deep, but enough to stay social. We've gotten especially close to our neighbors on either side, and another couple from the next street. Their daughter, Sarah, is Allie's best friend. When Allie left for school, Sarah took it hard. Honestly, I did too. I'd spent so much time with the two of them, their absence left a real hole in my routine. Melissa tried to fill the void by getting more involved in volunteer work, but it didn't really do the trick. One night, I turned to her and asked if she was happy. She looked at me like I'd asked something weird and shot back. Happy about what? I told her I was happy with life, but she'd seemed distant lately, less excited about things. I missed the good times we used to have together, especially with Allie around. I was starting to wonder if I was doing something wrong. Maybe there was something I should be doing to help her feel more like herself. She brushed it off, said everything was fine and that she didn't have any complaints. That confused me even more. I pressed a little, asked what she really wanted. Her answer? I just want you to be happy. Thinking maybe she needed someone to talk to, I suggested she try seeing a life coach, someone to help her find some spark again. She seemed unsure but said she'd consider it. Then, 2 weeks later, she signed up for weekly sessions. I thought, or maybe hoped, it might reignite some passion in our bedroom. But nothing really changed. We still sleep together twice a week, like clockwork. That part hasn't shifted. I'm not complaining, exactly. Melissa tolerates my occasional quick finish, and I overlook her, less than genuine moments of enthusiasm. It's what we've come to call normal, I guess, though I'm not really sure where we fall on the normal scale anymore. I've never been the kind of guy who talks about intimacy with friends, and I don't ask them about their relationships either. Our neighbors to the south, Mark and Cindy, are in their 60s. Mark's a quiet guy who's not exactly handy around the house. Honestly, he's more likely to break something than fix it. Cindy, though, she's an incredible baker. Mark's gained a few pounds thanks to her cookies and pies. One Saturday, I was at their place helping fix their sauna pump. Mark had waited months for the replacement part, and it was finally warm enough in early December to get the job done. Opportunities like that don't come often. I was out back in our gazebo when I heard the familiar grind of the sliding patio door. That sound meant someone was home, probably Allie, since Melissa was visiting her mom. I confirmed it when I heard her voice. He must be out back somewhere, she said, likely talking about me. My truck was in the driveway, so she knew I hadn't gone far. Then I caught something that stopped me cold. Oh my God, Mom, you're so behind the times, Allie said, clearly trying to keep her voice down. Maybe give Max a shot. Sarah says he's really experienced and super into making sure his partner's satisfied. That might be just what you need to break out of your bedroom rut. Wait. What? My wife was talking to our daughter about our sex life. I know we've had our issues, nothing wild, but still, and sure, maybe we've been stuck in a bit of a routine. But instead of talking to me about it, she opened up to our daughter? Trusted her with that kind of private detail? That hit me hard. Not just the content, but the fact she never thought to come to me first. What the hell was that about? I know you probably need some time to think everything over, Allie said. Oh, and Dad mentioned he'll be off hunting next weekend, so I'll get Jeff to invite Max over to our place. Wait, what? Max is kinda scrawny, she added, but apparently he's really into you. That was Sarah talking, chiming in like it was some casual matchmaking session. She even brought up some of his physical strengths, as if that would help sell him to my wife. My hands clenched. I had to stop myself and make sure I was actually hearing this right. So my daughter and her best friend were actively planning to bring Jeff's buddy Max over to hook him up with my wife? And Michelle wasn't shutting it down. Sarah threw in one more zinger. Even if you're unsure, Michelle, you should at least try something with Max. You never know. I don't remember what was said next. I think my frustration drowned out the words. But it was clear as day. They were plotting to burn my marriage to the ground. I sat there stunned. What the hell had I done to deserve this? All right, keep me posted. Love you. Bye. And that was that. I was furious. And honestly, it's a miracle I didn't hurt myself while wrestling with that damn sauna pump. The rest of that week at home was hell. I made it a point to be a complete pain, barely spoke to either of them, holed up in the garage or in my home office. Passive-aggressive? Maybe. But I wasn't in the mood for smiles or small talk. At least my tools are all in perfect condition now, polished, sharpened, looking better than ever. I didn't cancel my hunting trip, though. Instead, I asked a buddy to swing by the house and keep an eye out. I needed eyes on Michelle. And sure enough, photos started rolling in. Just before noon on Saturday, I saw snapshots, Allie, Jeff, and some lanky kid pulling into our driveway. Around 2 p.m., Sarah and Jeff left, but the skinny kid, Max, stayed behind. 4 hours later, he finally left. I got back Sunday. Michelle was in sweatpants, acting extra sweet, full of hugs and bright smiles, like nothing had happened. But I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I didn't respond to her attempts at affection. There wasn't any hard proof, but something felt off. She sat on the couch with her legs crossed, leaning way over to the left, more than she usually did. Almost like something was sore. Then, in the kitchen, it got worse. Allie, totally carefree, walked by and gave Michelle a playful smack on the butt. Both of them burst into laughter like it was some inside joke. I coughed to cover the sound, or maybe to stop myself from screaming. My chest felt like it was caving in. I prayed that if Michelle had done something, at least she hadn't passed anything on to me, physically or otherwise. That night I chose the couch. Michelle didn't argue. In the morning I told her I was having trouble breathing and needed to see a doctor. It was a lie, of course, just a cover story. I called in sick and told my boss I might have caught COVID. Luckily, he was understanding. Truth was, I needed space. And with all the sick leave and vacation time I had saved up, I could afford to disappear for a while. It also gave me a chance to pull off one last appearance, our annual Christmas Eve dinner. Pretending to have COVID kept everyone away, and I leaned into the lie. I felt totally fine, no fever, no cough, just a broken heart and a deep fury toward 4 people who should have known better. I checked into an extended stay hotel, the kind with a kitchenette and enough space to be alone with my thoughts. Melissa sounded almost relieved when I told her I'd be out of quarantine by Christmas Eve. She and Allie called me twice a day. I kept it civil, always sounding tired or groggy so I could cut the calls short. Behind the scenes, I started planning. I changed my will, reassigned my life insurance beneficiaries, and rewrote my emergency contacts. It was amazing, and exhausting, to realize just how many ties I'd formed over the years. Untangling them took days. I also started looking for a new apartment. That was a wake-up call, a painful reminder that this decision wasn't temporary. I was truly done with Melissa. And Allie? I was ready to cut off the financial lifeline. As for Jeff, the bastard who helped orchestrate this, he had some payback coming. I wasn't sure yet how I'd deliver it, or what Max's true role in all this had been. I didn't know if he was just a pawn or a willing participant. When you're drowning in rage, all kinds of ideas pop into your head. Some were dark. I even thought about hiring an escort to set Jeff up, like some corporations do to get rid of unwanted employees. But I knew that would hurt Allie too, and despite everything, I didn't want to wreck her life. She wasn't innocent, but she didn't deserve that. Christmas Eve came fast. We gathered around the table as usual, a fake plastic tree blinking red, white, and green in the corner. The scent of pine cones filled the air, and the food, as always, was delicious. Melissa had worked hard in the kitchen. Normally, at that moment, I'd say a few words of gratitude. But not this time. Not even close. I stood up, glass in hand, ready to make a toast, though it was clear from my expression this wouldn't be your usual light-hearted Christmas speech. I turned toward Jeff and asked casually, "So, what do you think of Heather?" The blood drained from his face. Across the table, Allie, who's been dating Jeff since high school, immediately snapped to attention. Everyone, including me, for the longest time, had assumed they'd be together forever. The kind of couple people expect to grow old and gray side by side. Jeff looked rattled. He stammered, asking who I meant. Tried to play dumb, like a politician caught mid-scandal. Claimed he didn't know any Heather. It was a weak denial, the kind that made you wince from second-hand embarrassment. I didn't let up. Without saying another word, I tapped my phone and played a short audio clip. A woman's voice filled the room. "Oh, Jeff, you're amazing. I'm so glad we met again." Then silence. I turned it off as quickly as I'd started it, hoping the final echoes would take any lingering doubts with them. I wanted to be wrong about that voice. But I wasn't. Allie exploded. She flew at Jeff like a storm, screaming about betrayal, demanding he get out of her life. She tried to hit him, really hurt him, and I had to move fast to stop her. I got behind Jeff, held him in place while we both tried to keep her from doing any real damage. "Michelle," I barked, "get your daughter out of here. Now." Allie was hysterical, shouting, crying, throwing out words that no one could take back. Michelle practically dragged her into the kitchen. The peaceful Christmas vibe was gone, replaced by a storm of curses echoing through the halls. While they were out of the room, I turned to Jeff. "I need you to understand something," I said, low and serious. "If Max even thinks about coming near me, he's going to regret ever being born." I laid it out plainly. Jeff had crossed a line, a huge one, and I wasn't interested in explanations or apologies. I told him I didn't want to see him again, not even in passing. His face said it all. He looked like a man who suddenly realized he had no cards left to play. I handed him the envelope. "Do this last thing for me," I said. "Then we're done." He nodded. Turning toward the kitchen, I called out, "Michelle, bring Allie back. We're not finished here." They came in slowly. Allie shot daggers at Jeff with her eyes. If looks could kill, he'd be a chalk outline by now. Michelle looked lost, like she didn't know where to sit or what to say. I took a breath. "First, let me explain how I got that recording," I began. "The woman in it, she's not really named Heather. Honestly, I don't even know her real name." Jeff shifted nervously. "She's an escort," I continued, voice steady. "I hired her. Paid good money to see if you'd take the bait. Everything was recorded. There's a video too, if anyone's curious." Allie's mouth dropped open. "You hired her?" she asked, as if I'd just confessed to robbing a bank. "I did," I said. Calm as ever. She looked devastated. Betrayed. Like she'd just been stabbed in the back, even though I hadn't lied to anyone. Michelle made a small, frightened noise and glanced briefly at Allie before looking away again. Both of them were crying now. I turned to Jeff. Your turn. He stood up, picked up the folder in front of him, and looked straight at Michelle. Michelle Dalton, you have been officially served, he said, handing her the papers. The room went dead quiet. For a second, I thought she might faint. She wobbled, then slumped. When she came to, she vomited right there on the floor. So much for the pine cone-scented ambience. Jeff placed the divorce documents in her lap and walked out. Allie rushed to her mom's side, sobbing uncontrollably. Michelle could barely speak. Her whole world had crumbled in the span of 10 minutes. Meanwhile, I headed to the master bedroom to finish what I'd started. I packed up Allie's prized graduation gift, the one she got after finishing 4 years of college. Wrapped it carefully and set it aside. Then I scooped up all her other stuff, tossed it into a garbage bag, and dropped it on the front porch. Outside, Michelle's luxury SUV was parked in the driveway, gleaming and expensive. But her bags? They went into a beat-up old sedan that had been around for 23 years. Fitting, since that's how long we'd been married. My lawyer reminded me I was still legally required to provide her with transportation. So I made sure she had a car, just not the one she'd grown used to. Back inside, I poured myself a bourbon. Took a sip. Then double-checked my list. All our shared credit cards? Cancelled. Allie's card too. She was cut off. All the credit cards where I was listed as a co-borrower? Paid off and shut down. Their cell phones? Cancelled. Of course, I was legally obligated to get Michelle a new one, so I bought her a prepaid Tacoma phone with a plan that gave her 60 minutes of talk time and 100 texts. Old school style. Allie didn't get the same courtesy. She and Michelle still had their flashy iPhones, the kind with what felt like a dozen cameras. But now they'd have to figure out their own phone plans and pay the bills themselves. And the house? I drove a for sale sign straight into the front yard, right by the garage. Legally, I couldn't actually sell it yet. Michelle still had her name on the deed, but that sign was more symbolic than anything. I wanted her to know exactly where things were headed. Instead of sitting in the living room surrounded by blinking Christmas lights and cheerful carols, I retreated to the basement. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, finding peace in the stillness, and in the muffled chaos going on upstairs. Nothing they once counted on was working the way it used to. And while they hurled insults at me, they felt soft, even laughable, compared to the raw, unfiltered things I'd screamed alone in my hotel room while preparing for this day. Somewhere above me, I heard Michelle. Trevor, we need to talk. Maybe he went for a walk, Allie guessed. His car's out front, Michelle answered. That's weird, mine's gone. And my phone isn't working either. Then Allie. Maybe he took both cars. More shuffling. Whose disgusting car is that in the driveway? One of them asked. It's not his. Michelle checked her phone again and groaned. He really canceled the plan. Unbelievable. Let's go ask Cindy if we can use her phone. What they didn't know yet, what I'd made sure of, was that the front door was locked tight. And both their wallets were still inside. No phones. No credit cards. No IDs. I hadn't just canceled their lives, I'd shredded them. Literally. Their driver's licenses? Gone. Straight into the shredder. I figured a little discomfort would be the perfect welcome to the reality they now had to face. I poured myself a drink, turned on the TV, and caught a cheap holiday special flickering across the screen. It felt laughably disconnected from what was happening in my own house. Eventually, I muted it. The silence felt more honest. Then came the noise. They were back at the door, banging and ringing the bell nonstop. Michelle's daughter, a girl I no longer considered family, finally noticed the garbage bag on the porch. She opened it and gasped. My car! She shouted. Everything from my car is in this bag. She kept muttering about how I must have sold her car, how I couldn't have, because that wasn't like me. But it was. Now. I bet he did sell it, Michelle said. And if he did, I'm going to lose it. Allie was livid. That car was my life. I loved it. Their voices got louder, more frantic. But I wasn't opening the door. The bell kept ringing. Through the window, I saw two women from the neighborhood walking by, clutching festive napkins. No way was I opening up and airing this circus in front of them. Michelle finally snapped. "Trevor! It's freezing out here! Open the damn door!" I called out through the window. "Keys are in the ignition." "What?" she shouted back. "That orange-green Malibu out front? That's your new ride," I said. "Everything from your old car's in there. Gas tank's full. Heat works. Consider it your ride into the future." There was a pause. I kept going. "Maybe Max would appreciate the gesture. You could offer it to him. See if he still feels the same about you." Michelle tried to soften her voice after that. "Merry Christmas, Trevor," she said, almost gently. "Merry Christmas," I replied. "Now take your daughter and go. I'm done with both of you." Eventually, the old Malibu sputtered to life. It wheezed and rattled, like it needed a new muffler 5 years ago. Not surprising, the guy who sold it to me was practically begging me to take it off his hands. Still, they drove away. I sat there, sipping bourbon, thinking, I haven't heard about anyone getting carbon monoxide poisoning from a bad muffler in a while. Maybe I'd get lucky. Probably not. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. It was my father-in-law. We've never been close, but we've always been able to talk civilly. He sighed. "Hey, Trevor. I've got two very upset ladies here. I figured maybe you'd have some insight into what's going on." Then he paused. "And Merry Christmas." I silenced my phone, took a slow sip of spiked eggnog, the kind with just enough fizz to keep the bitterness at bay, and let the adrenaline finally bleed out of my system. The blinking lights on the plastic Christmas tree cast soft shadows across the room, and before I knew it, they'd lulled me into a surprisingly peaceful sleep. When I woke up on Christmas morning, the sun was shining like nothing in the world had gone wrong. Warm, golden light filtered through the windows, trying to inject cheer into a place that no longer had any. On the dining table sat a bunch of cold, half-finished dishes from the night before. Nothing a microwave couldn't fix. I warmed up some ham, cheesy potatoes, comfort food, good at any hour. By the tree, a neat stack of wrapped presents waited for the evening's celebration. But none of them were for me. And none were from me, either. I hadn't bought a single gift for anyone in that house. If anyone had been paying attention, they'd have noticed that pretty quickly. I didn't bother unwrapping the few gifts that were addressed to me. I just picked out a handful of things I actually wanted to keep, the most expensive stuff, mostly, and packed it. Not a single photo came with me. Not one memory made the cut. I didn't want reminders. The rest? Left behind. Scattered like trash on the floor of a life that used to mean something. A few days later, Michelle showed up at the house. It was late, the sun had set, and a cold, biting wind was cutting through the air when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door but kept the latch on. Honestly, I half expected a kid selling poinsettias for a sports team. Instead, there was Michelle. No makeup. Hair undone. Pale as a ghost. "Please," she said softly. "Don't shut the door." I hesitated. She asked to come in, to talk. She begged me not to make a scene. "The neighbors don't need to see this," she whispered. I asked her straight. "What do you want?" She apologized. No excuses. Just a quiet, fragile, "I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked. I need to talk," she said. Michelle admitted it. She had been physically involved with Max. She said it gently, like she thought I might not know. When I told her I already did, her eyes widened. I asked if she'd hired a lawyer yet, if she was planning to fight the divorce. She said she was in the process, but she still hoped we could fix things. That we didn't need to end it like this. Too late. "You could have fought for this a month ago," I told her. "But you didn't. You chose yourself. You dragged our daughter into it too. This mess? It's yours." She asked what she could do, how she could make it right. I said nothing. There was nothing she could do. I was better off without her. Whether she'd slept with Max once or 100 times didn't matter anymore. The betrayal was enough. She begged me to just wait. To take a few weeks. Said it was a moment of weakness. I told her to leave. That I didn't want her in my life anymore. Not her. Not Allie. She knocked for a while, crying, pleading. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and waited until it was quiet again. By morning, she was gone. Almost a full year later, one day shy of Christmas Eve, I sat alone in my small 2-bedroom apartment, still keeping the tradition. I'd made myself a simple dinner. No turkey, no fanfare. Just food I liked. Early on, cooking had been a disaster. But I got better. And while betrayal is often described as a knife to the back, I think what it really does is rip a hole in your chest. Right through your confidence. Your pride. Still, I held on to my self-respect. There were so many nights I second-guessed everything. Wondered if I'd gone too far. If cutting everyone off was the right call. But deep down, I never regretted it. When the divorce went through, I remember thinking I'd failed. That I'd lost something essential. My mood at work soured. I snapped at people who didn't deserve it, and my boss had to call me out more than once. Eventually, I just shut down. Stopped talking to people. Skipped every company party. Every invite from friends. The silence became my norm. Even my closest friends began to fade away. One by one. And so, I started running. Just me, the pavement, and music in my ears. Strangers passed by, but they didn't bother me. That was the point. Running helped. So did learning how to cook. I dropped some weight. Suddenly, none of my old clothes fit anymore. Eventually, I had to switch up my wardrobe. Nothing fancy, just a more modern look that fit the new version of me. Every now and then, a coworker would throw a compliment my way about how I looked, but it never went further than that. The divorce, though? That dragged on forever. 9 brutal months. When we finally hit the end of the road, our house sold quicker than I expected. Instead of having to pay monthly support, Michelle got the lion's share of the money from the sale. That was the court's decision. Around that same time, Sarah and Jeff split up. Funny how Michelle's cheating somehow ended up being more forgivable than Jeff's screw-ups. Last spring, Jeff showed up drunk and furious. He cornered me, accusing me of setting him up with Heather, said it was all my fault. I wasn't even there when he was with her. Typical Jeff, always someone else's fault. He was weak, like most guys in that age bracket who can't resist temptation when it throws on a short dress and bats her lashes. Allie didn't take my silence well. She left angry voicemails, full of blame and venom. I never called back. Maybe someday I will. But probably not. She didn't invite me to her graduation. I didn't go either. Michelle, meanwhile, was having a rough time. She'd never worked a day since we got married, so getting a job now was a hard adjustment. My lawyer, thankfully, dragged out the financial negotiations. When the house sold, I just handed her the lump sum she was owed. The court agreed that was enough, and that was that. We both ended up with a downgraded lifestyle, but she felt it more. She kept trying to justify everything during the mediation sessions. Said 25 years together had to mean something. But to me, it didn't erase what she did. I remember the way she looked at me in one of those meetings, her eyes watering, her lips trembling. But my face didn't budge. Empty. Cold. A year passed. It was Christmas Eve again. This time, I sat in my small apartment, alone again, sort of. Macy, a friend going through a rough divorce herself, came over to keep me company. We weren't romantically involved. I wasn't there yet, and I don't think she was either. After dinner, we ended up in the living room. We danced to old songs, held each other for warmth, for comfort. Not for love. She wiped a tear from her cheek after the 10th song and said goodbye. She went home, and I knew that's all we ever were, two people trying not to drown. Meanwhile, Allie's voicemails started to shift. Less anger, more regret. Apologies. Still, I didn't answer. Then one day, late January, I opened the mailbox and found a letter. From her. I hesitated. Stared at the envelope, unsure if I even wanted to know what was inside. But curiosity won. Inside was a handwritten note and a photo. A selfie, really. Allie stood there with a somber look on her face, her hand resting on her visibly pregnant belly. Daddy, the note began. I'm so sorry for everything. I know I let you down. But I'm having a baby, your grandson. I hope maybe you can find it in your heart to let him into your life. If you can't, I understand. I really do. With love, Allie. There was a return address on the envelope. Somewhere new. No mention of a husband. No hints about who the father was. I squinted at the photo, trying to see if there was a ring on her finger, but nothing stood out. Even with all the bitterness I felt toward Michelle, I still wanted grandkids. That hadn't changed. It took me weeks to decide what to do. During that time, Macy and I drifted apart. We realized we'd just been leaning on each other out of loneliness. She decided to leave town, start fresh somewhere far away. She hugged me a few times before she left. Said goodbye softly. And just like that, she was gone from my life. To stay sane, I needed a new outlet. Something simple. I found myself signing up for pickleball at the local rec center, kind of like tennis, but easier on the knees. I played with folks around my skill level. It felt good to sweat a little, to be part of something. There was something about it, took me back to high school. The energy, the back and forth, the rhythm. That's where Shannon came in, loud, confident, and impossible to miss. She looked to be about my age. When I play, I usually miss more shots than I make. I'm not exactly skilled, and everyone knows it. One time, during a game, one of my throws accidentally hit Shannon, square in the chest. Her friends burst out laughing, teasing me that I should kiss it better. Shannon blushed hard, but played along. After the game, she joked, "You at least owe me a soft drink." That's how I really met her. Shannon. She walked up, introduced herself, and apologized, even though I was the one who hit her. She admitted she wasn't great at small talk, especially with women, which made me feel a little less awkward myself. She pointed toward a Jamba Juice over in the shopping plaza and suggested I treat her there. I agreed, and we took a slow walk over. At the cafe, we talked. Not deeply, just small things, surface stuff. I stumbled through my sentences. My words didn't come out smooth, but Shannon was patient. Eventually, she asked if I was seeing anyone. I hesitated before answering. Told her I didn't think I'd ever be in a real relationship again, not after what happened. She gently asked if my partner had left me. No, I said. She cheated. I couldn't get past it. It had been a few years, but the wound still felt fresh. I hadn't fully processed it. Shannon nodded, then asked if I was dating now. Here and there, I said. Dinner with someone once in a while. Nothing serious. She asked when the last date was. I admitted it had been since the divorce, almost 2.5 years ago now. December. Shannon noticed my hands were sweaty and offered to change the subject. I told her how I'd gotten into pickleball. Explained how I was sick of wallowing in self-pity, needed something to shake me out of it. Friends kept nudging me to try it. Eventually, I gave in, and to my surprise, I really liked it. Shannon said she enjoyed it too. But then she had to go. Same time tomorrow? She asked. 4:00 match? I nodded. I'll be there. We said goodbye, and she smiled. Stay strong, she told me. Things really do get better. That night, I felt something shift. Like maybe she was right. I finally replied to Allie. I told her I was open to trying. That maybe we'd never be close, but I'd like the chance to meet my grandson. I asked her to let me know when the time was right. But I made one thing very clear. I would not, under any circumstances, be in the same room as her mother. I signed it as Mr. Foran, just to keep a little distance. I mentioned Alina's ultrasound photos and attached a selfie. Judging by the timeline, the baby was probably born in May or June. I'm still not sure if she read the letter. I haven't heard back. The next day at the court, things got lively. Shannon and a few other women were all full of energy, flirting, laughing, just having fun. After one solid serve, Shannon grinned and said, "You know, you look really good in that shirt." Someone chimed in, "Bet he'd look even better without it." The group cracked up. Blushing, I shot back, "Funny you mention that, Shannon, you're killing it in those yoga pants. But I'd say you'd look even better without them." That comment turned the place into a circus. Everyone howled. The women started chanting for me to take off my shirt. I hesitated, then gave in, laughing as I peeled it off. Shannon instantly shook her head and scolded me like I was a misbehaving kid. The wolf whistles didn't help. Embarrassed, I put my shirt back on. "You're terrible," she muttered, but she was smiling. I leaned in and kissed her cheek. Later, as the games wrapped up, some of the women continued teasing. One even told Shannon she looked amazing. Without yoga pants. Shannon stayed cool, calm. Waited for her turn to play. Afterward, I treated her to a drink. I was just about to ask her something when I complimented her pants again, but she cut me off, telling me to knock it off with the fashion critique. Still, that ear-to-ear grin gave her away. While we sat with our drinks, I worked up the courage to ask her out, dinner and a movie. I was terrified she'd say no. But she didn't. She smiled and said, "Yeah, I'd like that." I couldn't believe it. I hadn't dated anyone seriously in over 27 years. I was clumsy, unsure, and painfully nervous. But with each date, I started to loosen up. Bit by bit, I felt like myself again, the version of me I'd lost along the way. Eventually, Shannon asked me to stay the night. As we lay there, she turned to me and asked, "Who were you thinking about?" The question caught me off guard. I paused, looked at her, and gave the only honest answer I could. "You." But inside, I still couldn't figure out what she saw in me. I'd always thought of myself as a broken-down loser. Just a reflection in someone else's rearview mirror. Then, one night in early June, Shannon held my hand in bed. We were talking about something simple, a birthday celebration for my late grandfather. But something about the way she said it made me pause. It almost felt like she already knew more than she let on. I hadn't expected Shannon to know, but she mentioned there was only one major hospital in the area. She'd been checking the newborn registry, just curious, and that's how she found out. Turns out a woman named Allie Foran had recently given birth to a baby girl. That news instantly eased something in me, a knot I didn't realize I'd been carrying. But it was Shannon's gentle kiss that really brought me back. We didn't rush into anything physical. Instead, we leaned into the comfort of closeness, long, slow kisses that felt like more than lust. They felt like healing. Afterward, exhausted but calm, I lay there beside her, thinking about what I should do next. Sending flowers seemed like a safe gesture. Not a declaration of love, but a quiet acknowledgement of her new role as a mother. The day after I sent them, a letter arrived. A real one, late-night postmarked, handwritten, raw. In it, Allie opened up in a way she never had before. She wrote about how she now understood how hollow apologies could feel, even when they were sincere. She said the memory of what happened that awful Christmas Eve still haunted her, how her hatred for me had burned hot, how she blamed me for wrecking her life by taking away her car, her phone, and her relationship with Jeff. She admitted that for a long time, she'd been bitter and selfish. Immature. She said she'd acted like a spiteful woman instead of a daughter. But somewhere along the way, something had shifted. She started seeing things from my perspective, seeing how terribly I'd been treated. She said she couldn't forgive herself for how she acted, how cruel she'd been. She described her old self as pure evil. And then she said something that stuck with me. She claimed she wasn't that person anymore. That she'd grown. Changed. Become someone new. She cried as she wrote, she said. Not out of self-pity, but remorse. She asked me to try again, to be part of her life. Not just for her, but for Bonnie. She wrote that if I could look her in the eye, just once, I'd see how much she meant it. That she was sincere. She even asked for friendship, not just fatherhood, and said a close friend had helped her understand the difference between strength and weakness, between goodness and cruelty. She didn't know what she could give me in return. Then she answered her own question. She said she named her daughter Bonnie, after my mother. She and Bonnie were living in a modest apartment, doing life together. She invited me to visit any time. Or, if I preferred, Bonnie could come spend time with me when Allie wasn't around. She ended the letter with something that broke me. No matter what's happened, I'm still your daughter. And I'm still hungry for your love. I read it twice before I showed it to Shannon. She read it quietly, nodded, and said she believed it was genuine. I told her I wasn't sure what to do. That I was afraid to let Allie back into my life, afraid she'd tear it apart like she had before. Shannon pulled me into a long hug, then kissed me softly and said, "You don't have to worry about me. I'm strong. I've got walls that keep the wrong people out. You broke through those walls, and I'm not going anywhere." We held each other, swaying like we were dancing to a song only we could hear. Her next words hit me hard. "You can't fully love me if you're still carrying all that hate for Allie and Jeff. You have to let it go. Not for them, for us." She was right. So the next evening, headlights lit up the address from Allie's letter, and I knocked on her apartment door with Shannon by my side. Allie opened the door, surprised but composed. I introduced Shannon as my partner, and Allie greeted her with a small, warm smile. We exchanged cheek kisses, polite, hesitant, and stepped inside. It was a small, cozy place. Lived in, but clean. Allie suggested I take a seat and hold Bonnie, and I did. She was tiny, so quiet, so peaceful, and her little hand wrapped around my pinky finger without making a sound. Looking down at her, I remembered just how delicate babies are. And just how strong they become. When I looked up, Shannon was already watching me. Her eyes were soft, filled with something deeper than pride. It was love. Then she asked Allie if Bonnie's father knew she'd been born. Allie hesitated. "Yeah, I told him. He thinks I'm trying to trap him, doesn't believe me. I don't know if he'll ever change his mind." We didn't talk much more after that. Just sat together. Quiet. Civil, a little broken, but still trying. Me and Allie kept our distance that night, both treading carefully around old wounds. But holding Bonnie, that changed something. She didn't cry. Didn't squirm. She just rested against me like she'd always belonged there. And maybe, in some way, she had. I left without hugging Allie or kissing her goodbye. As soon as I got into the car, Shannon gave me the look. "You know the one, part disappointment, part determination. You know she needs to hear it," she said. "And you know you still love her. Go back and do it right." I didn't argue. I stepped back out, walked up to Allie's door, and knocked. She opened it, a little confused. "Did you forget something?" "Yeah," I said. "I kind of forgot to hug you, and to tell you I love you." Her face crumpled, and for a second, it felt like we were characters in a Hallmark movie, overly sentimental, sure, but real. We hugged. Not just a polite embrace, but one that felt like a beginning. 6 months later, and just a few weeks before Christmas, we were gathered at my apartment again for our annual Christmas Eve dinner. Just me, Shannon, Allie, and Bonnie, of course. I cradled Bonnie in my arms as I said the blessing over the food, and then we ate, laughed, and exchanged gifts. Bonnie got the most presents by far. She didn't care much about what was inside them. She was more fascinated by the crinkly wrapping paper. The noise made her giggle, and honestly, that was the best gift of all. Because of the heavy snow that year, traveling was off the table, so we all stayed in and made the best of it. A year later, things had changed even more. Allie and Bonnie moved into my apartment full-time. Shannon and I started spending most nights at her place instead. We kept the Christmas Eve tradition alive, but now it was bigger, warmer, more complete. That year, We celebrated at Shannon's house with a full festive dinner. It was just before our wedding. Yeah, we signed a prenup. Both of us wanted peace of mind, but it didn't take away from the love. Funny thing, I noticed some of the other pickleball players giving me side eyes whenever I chatted with someone new. Guess news spreads fast when an old guy like me gets back in the dating pool. But I didn't mind. Let him talk. Carter Denton, Allie's husband and Bonnie's dad, joined us that Christmas. It had taken him a while, but eventually he realized he wanted to step up and be a part of their lives. For real. Bonnie and I? We'd become inseparable. She loved to curl up with me on the couch. We were cuddle buddies, and I couldn't be more proud to be her grandpa. Shannon's kids and grandkids were all there too. The house was filled with laughter, warmth, and that special kind of chaos only big families bring. During dinner, one of Shannon's sons stood up and led us in a beautiful holiday blessing. It was the kind of moment that makes you stop and reflect. That night, as I sat back and watched the people around me, the patchwork family we built from broken pieces, I realized something. Life doesn't wait for us to catch up. It just keeps going, with or without us. But now, I'm in it. Fully. And for the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely happy with where I've ended up. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living.